I'm glad you liked it.
I did. Welcome to the Stephen Shiels radio show. Tyler Murree is on the show. How are you, Tyler?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I watched the movie Generation Wolf, and I thought it was amazing what you did, and it was interesting. And you're acting in a scene. You're like on around marijuana, and you're growing that stuff too. That was pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. All plastic plants. I remember walking in on the we shot that and thinking like, "Oh my God, are we gonna get in trouble?" And the director was like, "No, man, it's fake. Don't worry about it." I was like, "Oh,
Your character, you played like a really it was like a real like drug dealing character. It was like so real to watch too.
he's a son of a gun, that Bill Anderson."
And the main character, I forgot his name. He was the entrepreneur, and he was getting investors into the movie. And then
Yeah,
you're running this marijuana business, and he's like, "What the hell's going on here?"
yeah, yeah. He thought I was just well. I gotta be careful not to give too much away, hey? So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, he thinks I'm doing it independently, but then we find out that maybe not so independently. But that's pretty much all I should say.
No, it was a good movie. I watched it on Amazon Prime, so
Excellent. Now,
that's
how'd you
how I
find
saw.
it?
I found it really good.
No, I mean, how did you like? Was it like Did it come up as a recommendation on Prime or?
Yeah, just something.
Okay,
And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'll check it out."
nice.
Yeah, how many years ago was this movie shot?
I think we shot that. We shot it in 2014, to tell
Mm.
you the truth. Yeah, if I recall correctly, it was the summer of 2014. And yes, it was because yeah, the a few months after that, I ended up getting a call to move to New York City for a little while to be on Broadway for a bit. So
Hmm.
my timelines right now, I've got COVID head, so I don't really know. You could tell me, hey, it's 2015. I'll be like, well, okay, I guess, sure, but but yeah, that's I have to think of milestones in my life to place things.
How have you been since COVID hit in Toronto? What have you been working on?
It's been we are currently still in a state of semi lockdown here in Toronto.
Mm.
We haven't done as well as you have on in the southern hemisphere. Um, Things are starting to look up a little bit with the vaccine rollout.
Mm.
Canada, unfortunately, has not been doing as well in procuring the number of vaccines that we need, but
Mm.
it's slowly starting to get there. Uh, the We are still filming quite a bit here in Toronto. The Canadian film sets are taking incredible precautions to have people tested several times a week. A friend
Wow.
of mine who's an actor just took a gig um, as the person who facilitates the testing on set for a show, for a Netflix show.
Mm.
So the film industry certainly isn't what it was,
Mm.
but we're doing our best to maintain as many productions as we can. For me, voice work has become a my focal point. My last year, I guess around May, my voice agent called and said the voice world is still doing pretty well, especially for people who have home studios.
Hmm.
So she highly encouraged me to, or she and her assistant helped me through the process of getting all the proper equipment to get a home studio, and we converted a closet in the house
Hmm.
into a little makeshift. So I get into my little studio and I get the script on the computer and I record a lot of TV commercials and a little bit of animation from a closet in my house. So that's been
Mm.
good. Yeah.
No, that's awesome, Tyler. I'm a classically trained musician. I'm
I was
starting.
reading that about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a Bachelor of Music, and I was a clarinetist, and then I liked film music, and I'm looking toward writing for film, but it's very tough in Australia because it's not widely popular here in Sydney as it is where you are, or in or
Right.
in the
But
United States.
the nice thing about Australia, I find, is that you've got such a unique and distinct voice. Like your film and television industry is uniquely Australian. It's unapologetically Australian, and I
Mm,
really love that. The Canadian proximity towards the United States, we end up pretending to be American all the time. Like Toronto doubles as New York City so much that
mm,
Winnipeg has to start doubling as Toronto sometimes. But because we're so busy pretending to be New York or Gotham.
mm,
Uh, but I love the. My wife watches a lot of Australian television
mhm.
on on Netflix and Prime and stuff like that. And I love the distinct Australian voice.
Hmm.
My son watched a great Australian kid show called The Investigators, and if anyone is watching who is in charge of investigators, we love it over here in Canada.
Mm.
Just saying. Yeah,
Yeah, Australian television and movies. There's a lot of good stuff out here.
great stuff.
You know.
And your actors are so compelling to watch.
Mm.
I've worked with a few Australians. I love one of the greatest friends I ever made. I shared a dressing room with an Australian for 18 months over here, Ben Minge.
Hmm.
I think he does a lot of TV still in Australia, and he's playing Sweeney Todd right now in Sydney, I think. But just a great guy and just so much fun. Australians have such a great joie de vivre.
That's so cool. And have you been an actor your whole life, or what have you done?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
I started doing high school plays when I was around 16,
Hmm.
and I kind of never looked back. So
So you've
and I'm
been
in my
doing it
40s now.
professionally all your life?
My first professional gig, the first day of rehearsal for my first professional show was on my 20th birthday.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
There's a lot of there are actors in Sydney that have to do it as a side job here,
Yeah.
because it doesn't become a full-time income. It's very competitive in Australia for some reason, even
Well, it's a
music
hard
too.
job because so many people want to do it. I think that pretty much goes for, that's Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the United States, England. It's, because if you can make it,
Mm.
you get a regular part on a TV series, or if you become a regular in the film world, then it can be an amazing life. But with lots of money and stuff like that. But for those of us who are grinders, yeah,
Mm.
like I moonlight waiting tables at a restaurant, and my side gig, like I do a lot of voice work, which I still consider acting, but yeah, you have to have the side hustle to, especially these days, the
Mm.
gig economy. I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but the gig economy is a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, I know gigs are starting to get back up and running in Australia slowly, but it's been very bad for the last year.
Yeah.
A lot of musicians I know, they've only just gone back. It's
Are
very
you
tough.
guys are you opened up now? Like can you eat inside restaurants,
Yeah.
or is it just patios? Is it, yeah, okay. You
They
can
eat.
gather and congregate. Is everyone still wearing masks?
No, that was dropped, but for a while, the New South Wales Premier required a mask in the shopping centre, but Melbourne was the one that got hit the hardest,
Right.
and they made it a mandatory law. And if you didn't have a mask, it was $1,000 fine because they went into a stage 4 lockdown last year.
Wow.
Mm,
Well, I mean, we have to do what we have to do, right? I'm
mm.
glad you guys have come out on the other side. I hope we can follow suit pretty quickly.
What about Canada? What's been the situation in Toronto for you?
Well, right now I mean, everyone's got their different way of designating what level of lockdown you're in right now. Ours is color coded, so right now we're in a modified gray zone, which is
Hmm.
the worst possible zone. The schools are open, so like I just dropped my son off at school, and I dashed back to set up my stuff so I could talk to you.
Hmm.
Um, so the schools are open. If they have a case, if one kid in the school or a classroom it tests positive, then the whole class is sent home for 2 weeks.
Mm.
We can eat. I mean, it's just springtime now here, so the weather is just starting to warm back up, and as of last Saturday, we were allowed to open patios and restaurants. You still can't dine inside, and you have to wear a mask. If you're in a public place, you have to wear a mask still.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
It's yeah, you guys have been hit so hard where
yeah.
you are, man.
Well, it was last summer. Things got down to the point where, in all of Ontario, the province where I live,
Mm.
um, we got down to like 75 cases, and we're like, oh, we've pretty much nipped it in the bud. And then September came, kids went back to school, and the second wave hit, and everything went to a steady incline, and the numbers just kind of went nuts. And then we had Thanksgiving, which we celebrate in October,
Mm.
and then the Americans had their Thanksgiving in November, and then the Christmas season. And at that point, the lockdown was 6, 7 months old. people were already starting to get fatigued, and they wanted to spend holidays with their families. And I think it was just, we had a bunch of super spreader events just back to back to back, and the numbers just went right up. And now with all the variants, we're starting the third wave. So things are a little bit scary, but hopefully, like we said a little while ago, with the rollout of the vaccines, hopefully things can start to look a little bit more normal by July or August.
Hopefully, because can't live
Yeah.
like this forever.
No.
You know.
Yeah, we decided in my family, like I've got a very close family who lives just a few hours drive from here, and we decided not to celebrate any of the holidays. I haven't seen my family since August, save for we had one quick little hello with my parents. We met halfway in the middle of December, masks on, stayed distant, only for 15 minutes, just to, so I opened my trunk and put all my Christmas gifts for my family in their trunk, and they did everything from them from my family, and we wiped it all down when we got home. So, but we haven't seen each other in months and months, and if you come from a close family, it's hard. I absolutely empathize with anyone who's struggling with mentally with how to deal with all this.
No, it's been crazy 2020. Netflix did a documentary, and I just thought, bugger it, and I didn't want to watch it. Just want to forget about it.
Yeah, it gets to a point too where you, and that's the beauty of being in this business, in the film and television, or the entertainment business at all. Like, despite the fact that a lot of our opportunities have gone away for a little while, it's still nice to be a part of an industry that the world is relying on to escape this madness. You know what I mean? I'm so delighted that you watch Generation Wolf, as what I can only assume you seem to be a movie lover, a film lover, and you just to escape, and not to escape to the usual. I mean, I love WandaVision and The Mandalorian just as much as the next guy, and I'll watch all of that stuff. But the fact that you're going and looking for lesser known products to watch, that's so heartwarming. I hope more people are doing that.
No, I mean, there's a lot of talent in what you guys did for that too. I thought I liked the script and all that.
Well, Christian de la Cortina, who played Vincent, the protagonist, he also wrote it. He directed it. He was the co-editor. He produced it. I mean, he was the jack of all trades. That was a labor of love. And I was speaking to him just the other day, and he's got another few projects on the go, and talking about perhaps being available to be a part of them. And he's such a driven go-getter. And it's one thing to say, oh, we've got $500 million to make a Superman movie, and everyone's just involved, and if there's a problem, you just write a check and you solve the problem. But for these independent movies, these labors of love, where someone's like, I had an idea, I had to write it, and now I need to get it on film, you do whatever you need to do to get this movie made. And that kind of passion, that drive to get it made, I think brings an entirely different element to the film.
Yeah, no, independent film, I think there's a lot of talent in that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Versus the big Hollywood blockbuster. Yeah, I like the independent scene better.
There's an opportunity too, like from an acting point of view. Like I'm a short fella. I'm only about 5'6", and I don't have like abs and whatnot, and I'm not your typical leading man. So sometimes, in order to get, like, I said to my wife for the longest time, like, I was only auditioning to play forensic clerks or used car salesman for some reason. Like, I'm on theater, I'm musical comedy, but on film and TV, I've got a jerk's face. So it was nice when the opportunity to audition for Generation Wolf came along. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the bad guy. This is get to go and try some different things, and hanging out in hot tubs with beautiful women, and firing guns and all that. That's not normally roles that I get to audition for in the mainstream audition scene. So it was a great opportunity to get in and read for a part like that.
That's so cool. That's really good. It's impressive what you've done. And since like music as well and acting, I think, go together too, because when I'm
Absolutely.
writing for a film, I like to try things out as well.
What's your process? Like when you see, do you get the script and then say, okay, I've got some ideas, or is it the script and then a meeting with the director, or do you see a rough cut of the film and then, let your emotions go to town with it? Like, do you sit in front of a piano and just kind of watch and
Just a
plunk
rough
around? I've
cut,
always been.
because I compose everything with a DAW, like software, music notation software for orchestra. So I
Hmm.
kind of get an idea what I want to write. If a director was to say, "I'll change it," then I'll be like, "Yeah, we can do that." I'm a bit old school as well.
Right. But when you see something, is it on the page where when you first hear a melody in your head and associate that with a scene or with a character, or what's your process with that?
I see it on the picture, on the film.
Okay.
Yep, very visual.
Okay.
hmm
Nice.
We've all got our different ways to work, Tyler.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I've
Uh,
always just been, because like I do a lot of musical theater. Music's a part of my life, but I don't read music very
mhm,
well. I mean, you could almost say I don't read music at all. I can find middle C on a piano,
mm,
but the and because I shared a dressing room with a guy a few years ago, and he's absolutely adore. He's got an encyclopedic knowledge of film scores,
mm,
and he's quite the composer himself, and just I never really paid attention to the scores as much, other than like, oh, that's beautiful, or it made me feel this. But the actual process, like when I look at a script and I see the character and I read what's going on, and I try to bring a bit of myself to it. But I've always been so curious as to and how the composer, where the starting point comes from.
mm. I
Yeah.
mean, if it was like if it was a dramatic scene, I might put tension in the harmony. Maybe if it's a child's play, I'll keep it in a major key, make it happy.
Mhm.
So it's all different emotions too. If it's comedy, trill here and there. There's
Yeah.
always different techniques, Tyler.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
It's real. I love the whole process of like, when the pandemic first started and we were locked down. My son and I would in the backyard fiddling around with just the phone, and we'd make little movies. And it's amazing how, and I would find music either in my iTunes list or what iMovie gives you to as their stock
Mm.
sounds and music. But it's amazing how a little bit of music can entirely change the feel of the scene. So we had a lot of fun playing with that.
Ah, it does. But other than acting, what do you do?
I try to make that my main focus.
Yep.
Acting, and being a dad.
Mhm.
Those are the and a husband. Those are my three big things. I dabble in writing, and when I say I dabble, I have, I think, maybe a folder with 15 ideas started and nothing finished.
Mhm.
I'm that kind of writer. I love ideas. I'm a huge Batman nerd. I love me some Batman, to
Mhm.
the point where I'll lie awake at night thinking about different versions of the Batcave for too long for a man in his 40s. But so yeah, that whatever keeps you busy, but keeps you young at heart, I think,
Mm.
and playful. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean Batman. Those comics go back years and years and years.
1939, the first Batman was first featured in Detective Comics.
Mm. And
Yeah.
The Dark Knight Rises with Heath Ledger as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Well,
That
that was the
was
Dark Knight. The Dark Knight Rises was
yep.
after that. That was the Bane one. Yeah.
Whoops.
It's all good.
No, Hans
You can tell, like, a
Zimmer's
huge Batman nerd. I'm like, actually,
Hans Zimmer's a fantastic composer as well for the
is he
Batman.
ever? Oh, I love Hans Zimmer. I will sometimes just like I'll YouTube Hans Zimmer movie scores and just put it on and play it in the background when I'm trying to get something done. I love Hans Zimmer score, especially like the tension he created in the Dark Knight, the Joker's theme. It
Mm.
was just that very thin sound, and then it rose to a crescendo. It created so much tension in the scene. Loved it. And Batman's theme too. That gong 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 gong.
Mm.
His Man of Steel theme for Man of Steel, I thought. I mean, the Superman theme that John Williams composed is so iconic, right? But that Man of Steel theme, it's so soft and slow, and then as it rises, Especially, I think if you look at the score from Man of Steel and the one that says First Flight, and then the full version of that is What Are You Going to Do When You're Not Saving the World? That's the title of the track. And just the progression of that, it tells such a beautiful story, and I think a way that is just as good as the iconic John Williams one.
Mm. Oh,
Huge nerd.
it's fantastic stuff. I mean, have you played any of the Batman video games?
Oh, I
Yeah,
just went for a search for, remember Batman Arkham Origins?
yeah,
It
that
was the
was good.
prequel. It was a good one. Not as good the gameplay as Arkham Asylum, and then eventually to Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight is they're such a it's such an amazing progression of games. But you can only get Origins on a PS3, and I lost my PS3. I got the flashing red light of death years ago. Then I heard about you can get it on PS Now, so I just started playing Origins again. Yeah, I love those games.
And there was Arkham Asylum too, as
Yep,
well.
that was the first one. Arkham Asylum, then Arkham City, then they went to the prequel Arkham Origins, which was made in Canada by WB Games in Montreal, and then they finished off the series with Arkham Knight. And now apparently this year they've got a couple of new ones. I forget what the game is. Oh, Arkham. I don't know, something out here. Anyway, the premise is Batman's dead, and he's left a note to Nightwing, Batgirl, Robin. Is it one of the Robins or two? Or yeah, and they've got to go save the city from whatever threat it is. It looked pretty cool online a few years or about 6 months ago. They released the trailer for that.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, DC I find's better than Marvel. The Wonder Woman as well. There's been some of the Wonder Woman
I think
movies.
on paper they've. I prefer the DC heroes historically and on paper, but I have to give it to Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
What they've done with the MCU is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely amazing. Taking a C-list character like Iron Man and taking, how many years it's been now, 15 years since Iron Man came out, and that world that they've built, the fact that they can go completely out of left field and create something like WandaVision,
Mm-hmm.
even Ragnarok, when they made Thor Ragnarok, that was such a totally different feel from the other movies, and they were able to pull it off because they've created this incredible world. It's for nerds like me who really love this stuff, they've done a great job. So on film, Marvel wins. On paper, I'm a DC fan.
Well, the Iron Man movies with Robert Downey Jr. were fantastic. I remember seeing them.
Unbelievable.
AC/DC had their stuff played in that too.
A lovely resurgence for some classic rock.
Yeah, Iron Man's good.
Yeah.
He's the best,
And Robert Downey Jr. just gives such an amazing flair.
Mm.
I'm sure a lot of actors could have done a great job in that role, but Robert Downey Jr.'s particular that particular nuance that he gives it, that feel, that idea that no matter, like, anything can come out of his mouth, anything at all, and you just got to kind of go with it. It's exciting to watch.
Have you worked with any of the big famous actors in Hollywood, Tyler?
Um, Gosh, the biggest actor I ever worked with was, I mean, he's passed now, was Peter Ustinov. I'm not sure if you remember Peter Ustinov. He won an Academy Award in 1979. I think it was for Ben-Hur, one of those epic movies. I was on the set of a movie. It was a TV version for CBS of Salem witch trials. This was back when I was just starting into the business, and they were shooting it near where I grew up on location. And I was about to go start a summer theater gig, and I had this month between the end of school and the start of my theater gig. And my mom said, "Oh, they're shooting a movie up in this. So why don't you go and be an extra?" I was like, "Okay, fair enough." So I went. I gave them my real headshot and my real acting resume, and they're like, "Great, you could be an extra. Go, have that." And it was in a really hot June, and we were in period clothing because we were playing, in Salem, Massachusetts, in the 1700s or whatever that was. And so like wigs and really heavy hot costumes, and for the first little while it was fun and yay, but after about 2 weeks it was just dying and a slog. And I remember this one day I had been on set for about since 5 in the morning.
Wow.
And Yeah, and it was by this point it was around noon, and I was just hot, and I wasn't in the mood to joke or anything like that. And then all of a sudden there was this like hustle and bustle in the area with like the extras holding area, and a producer was coming around and went, "Is Tyler Murrey here? Where's Tyler Murray?" And I was like, I'm gonna get a role. They heard that I'm an actor. I'm gonna get a line in this movie, and I was so excited. And he comes up to me, he finds me, he says, "Are you Tyler Murray?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "I heard you're from this area." "Yeah." "And I heard you're a theater student." "Yeah." "So you're in the business?" "Yes." "Okay. Peter Ustinov is arriving on set today, and he's not from the area, and we need to give him a personal assistant, a bit of a like a. I want you to be his guide around the area. Are you willing to be his like? You're not going to be an extra anymore. You're going to be his assistant." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure." And as soon as I said yes, I felt like, and I'm remembering this in a very dramatic way. Obviously, this was 20 years ago. But I felt like hands were grabbing me from all sides. Someone was leading me back to an area to take off my wig and take off my clothes, and somebody had my personal clothes folded neatly, and they were handing it to me. I was like, "Where did you get that?" And the producer's in my ear saying, "This is what's going on. This is going on." And this is before everyone had a cell phone too. And he hands me a cell phone, and he says, "This is going to be your driver." And I was like, "What?" And beside this beautiful Lincoln Town car was this humongous guy in a super tight Harley Davidson t-shirt and khaki pants, like nice, like from the belly button down, he was all business. From the belly button up, he was the most dangerous human being I've ever met in my life. And he goes, "How you doing? My name's Choker." And I was like, "Hi, Choker." So we get in his car, and the producer's still talking to me. And he's like, "This is what you're going to do. This is what's going to be you're responsible for. This is what you're going to do." And we get on to where the main cast is having lunch, and all of a sudden I find myself in a room with Peter Ustinov, an Oscar winner and one of the most famous human beings on the planet, Shirley MacLaine, Kirstie Alley, and just a bunch of other like celebrities. And I was just kind of frozen. And Ustinov turned to me and went, "Oh, my new best friend. All right, let's go." And then we went off and got in our town car, and Choker drove us to wherever he needed to go. And it was, anyway, that's a dramatic start to how that happened. But I spent 2 weeks on location with Peter Ustinov. And in that 2 weeks, that man taught me more than I learned in 4 years of theater school. He was the nicest, most intelligent, warm, open, kind human being. And his talent, ferocious, unmatched, just an unbelievable human. That he's the biggest star I've ever met. I mean, Shirley MacLaine, who was also an Oscar winner, was there too, and I didn't interact with her a whole lot. But Peter Ustinov and I would sit and chat for hours. It was awesome. And then after the 2 weeks, I was like, "Well, you're going back to Toronto to do the in studio stuff, and I got to go do my play." He went, "All right, bye," and that was it. It was unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with certainly celebrities here and there, and but nothing compares to that time with Ustinov.
Like it's amazing when you work with a celebrity who's achieved so much, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are you a wrestling fan at all?
I love wrestling.
All right. You know Bret the Hitman Hart?
Yes, it's a shame he got screwed by Vince McMahon.
Well, I mean, just after that happened,
Mm.
around, actually, it was 2004, I did a pantomime Christmas children's play here in
hmm
Toronto. And every year they bring in a celebrity guest. And we were doing a version of Aladdin. And Bret the Hitman Hart played the genie
hmm
in this. So I spent a month, and I was a huge WWF fan back when it was WWF in the 90s. So
The Attitude Era.
right, yeah. And then so we got into, and I was playing one of two clowns, and as I said before, I'm a diminutive fella, and so the other guy was short as well. And at the end, instead of like the magical lamp, there was a magical ring. It was a wrestling ring, and we had a wrestling match with Bret at the end of the show. And I remember the first day of rehearsal, we got in there, and everyone's kind of all nervous, and everyone's just like, because Bret is an A-list star. He's known around the world. Again, super nice man. And I didn't know what to do, so I thought, well, I'm gonna go big. I'm gonna go as big as I can. So we got in the ring, and everyone's kind of awkwardly wondering how to start. And I went, All right, Hart, I just want you to know I'm not taking it easy on you. I am going for the championship. That belt is going to be mine. And I just kind of went off. And the director and the stage manager were looking at me like, did you just get yourself fired? And Brett took a minute and he just smiled and he went, all right, let's go. And we just started playing around, and I was put in like 10 minutes later, I'm in the sharpshooter with Bret the Hitman Hart. And I was like, oh, this really doesn't hurt. He moved like a quarter of an inch. And I was like, oh my God, that's the most pain I've ever been in my life. It was awesome. He was so nice. And then, after rehearsal or after a show, we'd go to a pub, have a couple of pints, and, I'd have a hamburger, and Brett would have like 3 dishes because he's a humongous guy. He's got to have all those carbs. And we would just ask him about wrestling. And he just told stories and the story was interrupted 15 times a minute by people coming up being like, are you Bret Hart? You're awesome. It was great.
I'm a huge wrestling fan. I love wrestling. The WWE, it's a PG show. I don't watch it anymore.
You consider that PG?
I like it when Steve Austin was wrestling. That was the
right
best.
back. Oh, you're talking like the 2000s, like the early 2000s, the
Attitude Era.
Really started to switch.
Yeah.
That's a little bit around when I kind of started to switch off. Like The Rock, Steve Austin, Mankind, The Undertaker at his heyday. I was like, yeah. I was in university at the time, and we would watch Raw, and then I don't know. As I guess I was working more. I just had a little less time, or I couldn't stay up till midnight to watch the show anymore.
In your opinion, Tyler, how do you feel about a PG show, WWE being PG now?
I don't pay enough attention to it anymore to really see. When I was a kid, when I was 10, 11, 12, I loved it, and they would still do the arena shows, and every once in a while, if it came to my town, I came from a small town, and my dad would take me, and I loved it because it was PG. It was so obviously fake, you know. I think sometimes maybe some audiences might blur the lines between real and what's, it used to be the bad guy would say very obviously bad things, and there was the heroes, and then there were the heels. And then soon the heels started acting heroically, and the heroes started acting like heels, and the lines got blurred. And I think when you play too much in the gray area, it becomes a little less PG. But I don't know. The world operates in a gray area, right? So I don't watch it enough to really have a strong and informed opinion about it.
Yeah,
my son doesn't watch it. I'll put it that way.
Because when I watch the old matches, and they used to bleed in the ring, they'd go to war. But now, because they got a kids target market, they've PG'd it. But it's just not the same anymore.
Yeah, back in the days when they used to hide the razor blades and they'd cut themselves to get the blood and stuff like that. That was, and I used to, before the internet, I would have these wrestling magazines. So make sure my dog. Just a second, I have to let my dog out. Go. He's just paused. He's and you'd watch like some of these magazines, like the stuff that wasn't WWF. They would have these like a blood-soaked Ric Flair, and you'd think, well, that's a bit much for me. My 13-year-old self was like, oh, I want to see Hulk Hogan drop a very undangerous leg on a guy to finish him off. But so that never appealed to me. Although I did appreciate the how you can have 50,000 people watching you and still be able to, however you did it, like a little ninja, cut yourself and then put the razor away. Also, there's not a whole lot of place to hide that razor. Personally speaking, I wouldn't, if I had like just a little loincloth pair of shorts, I would not put a razor in there if I was jumping around. That's just me. I'm not a risk taker. But
there's an art and a storytelling to it. They're actors too. They become one of the best actors.
To be able to improvise the way they improvise is it's a skill. I've seen a lot of people who are, you know, trained actors who cannot just monologue off the cuff the way
Mm,
those guys do. And certainly the athleticism is, I mean, they get thrown around.
mm. You
So
know, because you look at like you got Randy Orton, The Rock, Triple H, John Cena, Dave
yeah,
Batista. They've all gone to Hollywood.
yeah.
They
Well,
can
The
make
Rock
you.
is so
Oh
The
yeah.
Rock is so. I'm also an acting coach, and I work on the set of kids shows
Hmm.
frequently for like Nickelodeon and Disney Channel. And one an actor I coached once played The Rock's daughter, and she just went off on. He was just the nicest, sweetest, kindest, funniest man. You love to hear stories about that.
Mm.
I've heard the same thing about John Cena. You know, just a really nice, fun guy. But I don't know.
The Undertaker too is a legend to be remembered
I
in
remember when he
wrestling.
first came out. When I was a kid, I liked vampires and stuff like that, you know. And
Mm.
being a Batman fan, just the idea of
Hmm.
like a dark presence who is just almost indestructible. And like when the Undertaker would, you know, he would sit up in the middle of his matches. I always thought that was I didn't like Harley Davidson Undertaker as much as I liked like the actual, you know, the cloak and the big brimmed hat. And he didn't say anything. I like that version of the
You
Undertaker.
know, he really threw Mick Foley off the Hell in a Cell.
Yeah,
I don't know how Mick Foley got up from that.
that man is. I mean, he's a and I say this with all respect, he's a freak.
Mm.
That's like to endure the pain that he endured was that was something else.
Well, in those days, they weren't as strict on concussion as they are now.
This is true. This is very true.
You know, wrestler, the Undertaker had a broken foot in that match.
Did he?
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know. If I stub my toe, I'm like, I'm out. I'm out for a week. Goodbye, everybody. So it's my pain
Yeah,
threshold is different. That's why I do theater, darling.
that's so cool that you're doing theater. And you've been in Broadway too, have you?
Yeah, I was in Les Mis on Broadway. So I did. Yesterday was the 15th anniversary of the opening night of The Lord of the Rings the musical,
Hmm.
which premiered here in Toronto 15 years ago, and that was that was amazing. So
How
but,
much theater is theater more popular in Canada or New York on
New York,
Broadway?
New
Okay.
it's there's I've only done the one show in New York. I've done a few shows in the States. You know, I toured with Lion King across the States and Canada, and I did some summer theater at a playhouse in Vermont. But New York is the vibe for theater in New York is different from anything I've ever experienced in my life. We love theater here in Toronto, but Canadian audiences are much more reserved than the American audiences, and in New York especially, and has nothing to do with Canada, the States, or anything. It's a mecca for theater, right? So people come to New York specifically to see theater.
Mm,
So the love for that is it's palpable. You can feel it. And
mm.
if you, in Times Square, surrounded by all these theaters and people lining up to try to get deals on tickets or last minute. We were right next door. The theater next door to me was Hamilton, and our stage door was beside their stage door, and there was a lottery because the show was always sold out. So Lin Manuel Miranda would be out there with a megaphone, and people would sign up for this lottery, and then an hour before the show, he would call out the winning numbers for the winning tickets for people who got their tickets for the show. My cousin came to see me. He and his wife were visiting me, and they signed up for this lottery. And I'm waiting to go into my stage door to get ready for my show. But before I did that, I sat outside with them, and they won the lottery. And Lin Manuel Miranda handed my cousin's wife the tickets. They ended up going back to see Hamilton like 6 times
Wow.
in New York because they just loved it so much. And um, it having just walking down the street and celebrities, like there's Kelsey Grammer, Frasier or Beast from X-Men, depending on your particular your tastes. Or I remember going to this one bar. A friend of mine who had been in the show for a while, I joined about 9 months into the run. He said, I'm going to take you to this bar. There's always celebrities that hang out here. I was like, okay, fair enough. I'm not expecting to see anybody. And I walked in, and Steven Spielberg was sitting with Bradley Cooper. And I was like,
Wow.
yeah. And I was trying to look cool, like I wasn't phased by it, but this was the look on my face. So yeah,
That's amazing. Yeah, Steven Spielberg he's talented. He's a director, is
he's
he?
done okay for himself.
Yep.
Yeah, you know.
With Star Wars,
Well, he didn't make Star Wars though.
didn't he? Oh.
Nope, that was George Lucas.
Ah, wrong one.
Yep,
Oops.
but they were partners. I mean, they did a lot of stuff together.
Hmm.
Yeah, but Jaws and E.T. and those little chestnuts. He's done okay.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I studied Jaws when I was in my undergrad degree.
yeah,
That was something we
Well,
looked at.
yeah. With the mechanical shark.
Mm. And the
That
minus.
monologue in Jaws is the no, what's his name? What's the character's name? When he talks about how the fishing boat went down and all the men was eaten by the sharks. It's such a great monologue. He tried to do that. The first night he tried to do it, he convinced Steven Spielberg to let him actually get smashed and try the monologue, and it absolutely didn't work. So the next day he did it with a hangover, and it worked just fine. So
Yeah, we studied that famous minor second interval as the dun dun dun.
so simple but so effective.
So there's amazing music theory behind that too.
Do tell.
Yeah, minor second interval that's building tension in the harmony as the shark's about to
Yep.
eat their prey.
Started off slow,
Mm-hmm.
then let it build. Crescendo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know anyone my age who didn't hear that music in their head, even swimming in a swimming pool, let alone like a river or a lake. Remember the first time I was in an ocean, I was like, that's all I can hear. So,
Other than that, weather-wise in Toronto, see, in Australia, we had the very bad bushfire in 2019-20.
quite the couple years in Australia.
Mm.
Yeah.
Do you guys get bushfire in Canada?
In Western Canada, in British Columbia, it's a bit more common. Where I am right now in Ontario, we we don't tend to get a whole lot of phenomenon like that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get the occasional terrible winter storm or an ice storm, but the uh, the West Coast gets the bushfires
Mm-hmm.
a bit more. Yeah.
Because California, you always get the wildfires all the time in California, every year.
I was in LA visiting my cousin in I guess it was October of 2019, and we landed and we couldn't wait to get into the pool and hang out, um, and there was a stay inside order for 2 days. The first 2 days we were there because of a massive fire, and the smoke in the air was thick and palpable.
Mm.
It was and like you have to stay home, put a towel under the door so the bad air doesn't seep in. It was kind of scary, but interesting nonetheless. Because, like I say, in Toronto, we just don't get that. It's a nice little pocket in this part of Canada where we don't really have to worry about a whole lot. We don't have any poisonous animals. We don't really have any threatening animals.
Come to Australia.
There was a news article. There's some floods happening right now, right in New South Wales.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
Sydney.
okay. So there was a news story that made it up here about the thousands and thousands of brown spiders
Mm.
traveling inland like a moving carpet.
Mm-hmm.
My son looked at that. He was like, "We are never going to Australia, ever." I was like, "Well, I don't think the entire country of Australia is." He's like, "Doesn't matter. We're not going to Australia." So
Australia's a beautiful place. We got everything here, Tyler.
yeah, you really do. I was saying I've got a few friends from down under,
Mm.
and I've always wanted to visit Australia. I mean, like was saying before, there's such a great vibe from Australians. The sense of fun that Australians have is, it's just adventurous, and I want more of that in my life.
We'll put it this way: if you go to the Northern Territory, you're pretty much going into like an Asian country because it's so hot and humid in the wet.
Yep.
It's hot all year round up there, And then in New South Wales, you go up to the Blue Mountains, it gets snow, not as thick as Canada, but it does get cold.
Yeah.
So it's like you
Well,
got
so do you experience four seasons in Sydney?
sort of, but not
Yeah.
as it gets very, very hot, but not we do get cold days, but not like snowing like you would
Right.
in Toronto.
Yeah. We don't get as much snow as we used to here. It was a pretty mild winter for us. I mean, we still had days when, shoveling a foot of snow, but it doesn't last as long as it used to. It felt
Hmm.
like when I was a kid, winter was 6 months or 8 months, and now it's like, well, there's a 3 or 4 months there. We're gonna hunker down, but
What time does the sun go down in Toronto in the winter for you
uh,
usually?
in December on
Mm.
the shortest days, it's pitch black by 4:30.
4:30. Ours is
Yeah.
about 5:30 in winter.
Yeah.
What about do you guys get very hot days in Toronto?
Yeah, actually, it can. You go by Celsius, right? Not
Yeah,
Fahrenheit. Yeah, so us too.
Celsius.
I guess it's just the states who do Fahrenheit. But in uh, in Toronto, in the peak of summer, you can get up to, with the humidity, 40 degrees Celsius.
Shit.
Yeah, right. But it's so but we experience four distinct seasons.
Mm,
Like right now, it's just the beginning of autumn for you, right? It's the beginning of spring for us.
mm.
So right now we're coming out of the cold patch, and we've had a few really nice warm days. Like I said, with the lockdown has just been eased a little bit. So as of just last Saturday, we're able to open patios and restaurants. So last night I had my first shift back since November
Mm.
at the restaurant where I moonlight, and it was just, I mean, not a whole lot of people came out, but it was still, this is that time of year when it gets above 5 degrees and people are like tank tops and shorts,
Hmm.
because Canadians are nuts that way. But the minute you see the sun coming out for longer than a half an hour, people are like, let's get the patio, get me a pint. So
What's
when it gets to 40 degrees, we enjoy the 40 degrees, and like we bear through it, but we know that in 6 months it's going to be minus 40. So
do you guys get it like a heat wave? Because in Sydney we get it like fucking a week. It can be like that.
yeah, yeah, we'll
Ugh,
get that.
drives me nuts.
Pretty much July, late June to early August is hot. Then August starts to cool down a little bit, and then we'll get like second summer in September,
Hmm.
and we'll get like a week or two of nice hot weather, and then it'll decline. So, like I said, four distinct seasons. So even if you don't like it right now, you're like, well, let's wait a few months and it'll be different.
What
Yeah.
about your winter? Do you get like thick snow?
We can't, like I said, this year was kind of mild,
Yeah.
but I've got, every once in a while I'll send a picture of my wife and I shoveling like 2 feet of snow to get our car out of the driveway, and I'll send it off to my cousin in LA, be like, hey, you missed this, don't you? But yeah, I mean, it's pretty distinct.
So you're working in a restaurant. Do you guys rely on tips in
Yep.
Canada? Oh, I didn't
Yeah, they
know.
still have that system. It's ridiculous, but yeah.
Because I know in the States, they always rely on tipping in the United States.
In the States, it's even worse. In the States, so I mean, you get like a set minimum wage, right?
Mm,
And in Canada, if you're in a waiter or a bartender, your minimum wage is a little bit less than the standard minimum wage, with the understanding that you will be making gratuity on top of that.
mm.
Whereas in the States, it can be, sometimes it's like half of what minimum wage should be, because they're thinking, well, you're actually working for tips, which is,
Mm.
it's ridiculous. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, and depending on the restaurant where you work, it's, if you're working at, a diner where people are coming in for eggs and coffee, you're the check, the percentage of that check is so much smaller. So you have to serve that many more people. Whereas if you work in a high end steakhouse, you know, 15 or 18% of that could be phenomenal. What the diner people make in a week, they can make the steakhouse can make in one table. So it's kind of
So
ridiculous.
with your system, do they put the tip on the bill, or how does it work for you guys?
No, so, and this is where it can get iffy. Um, the Whenever you pay your check, I'll bring the machine to the table, and you'll have the option of,
Gotcha.
so we'll say you can leave 15, 18, 20, or other. You can enter your own percentage in. And sometimes people are very generous, and they're like, "We're gonna," especially during COVID times, people are like, "Wow, you have to wear a mask and touch food like a plate with saliva all over it. Maybe you deserve a little bit extra." Whereas some people are like, "Well, you know what? I've had a hard year too, so I'm gonna give you 10% or 0%." The thing is, with the tip out, like if you have like a bartender or your kitchen staff, and you're supposed to share a little bit, a percentage of your tips, if you tip me 0%. I'm actually losing money on your table because I'm the tip out, the percentage is off the bill. So 3% of your total bill I have to share with the kitchen. If you tip me 0, I'm still giving them 3% of your total bill. So I'm paying out of my pocket to give them a percentage. So when people don't tip, I don't think they're quite taking that into account. It's a weird system. Everybody should just be making a livable minimum wage, in my opinion. But and forget tipping altogether. If we could get rid of tipping, I would be all for that. Because I would much rather just not be a waiter at all and focus my entire time on acting. But
because in the States, they put the tip on the bill, but you could
sometimes.
You can
so
give
if you
extra.
Have a table where you're like 6 or more or 8 or more, sometimes they'll say the gratuity is automatically included. So
yeah, but they can't force you to tip if you don't want to.
Nope. No, it's entirely optional.
That's slavery, Tyler.
Well, it's I guess it's a bigger conversation.
Because in Australia, we get $20 an hour, but we don't rely on tips here if you don't want to.
Right.
No one tips.
Well, I mean that's a proper way. I mean, like I said, if I could get rid of tipping and just everybody making a decent wage, then I would. But there needs to be a total overhaul of the system. So, and that.
But if customers pay with cash, do they have to tip, or is it only with the card they have to tip?
No one has to tip. And even with a card, you can, like when it says the option for other, you can decline tipping altogether if you want.
In the States, what's a pain in the backside is if you pay by the card, they make you tip on the card.
No,
is it?
The experiences I've had have always been like you get the option because.
Gotcha.
You can, because in the States you still mostly have to sign your chit. That was in my. I haven't been there in years. But so you can as you're signing, that's when you have the option to, and then whatever the tip is added on later on through the credit card company. But yeah, you're never, the only time you're forced to tip is if it's agreed ahead of time that, just so everyone knows, gratuity is included, and it's usually if there's a group of like 6 or more.
Yeah. Tyler, thank you for coming on today's show. Where could people find you on
We didn't talk a whole lot about Generation Wolf. But anybody who wants to see Generation Wolf, please go to Amazon Prime. I would love to expand the audience for that movie because even though it was a few years ago, we really had a great time making it. And thank you for reaching out and wanting to have a chat.
You're welcome. Where can people find your social media?
I'm... oh, goodness me. I'm so terrible at social media. I've got a Facebook page. If you just type in Tyler Murree, Murree is how to spell the last name. You can get me on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm Murray Tyler, or at Murray Tyler, and on Twitter, I'm at Tyler Murree. I very rarely tweet. I got Twitter to find out what, like, when the metro would be late or what the weather was.
Or when Donald Trump's tweeting.
Oh my God, I wouldn't follow that man. I would not follow that man.
I don't blame you.
Again, there's another conversation for another day. I try to keep my politics out of my acting talk. So.
Heard it a lot in Australia too.
Oh, but who didn't, right? Anyway, hopefully we can move past that era and focus more on good movies and great music and wonderful film scores. I hope to hear you scoring a lot of films soon.
You will one day.